So Horatio's Garden is a national charity, and we build beautifully designed gardens right in the heart of NHS spinal injury centres in order to improve the quality of life and well-being of people who have experienced life-changing spinal injuries, as well as their friends and the family and the dedicated hospital staff who look after them. The charity is named after my eldest son, Horatio, who is a volunteer and came up with the first ideas back in 2011.
The garden has been this amazing thing that's been built around the hospital. It just takes away from that very clinical environment of patients who have been very unwell and have had sometimes a really terrible thing that's happened to them. And from the therapy side of things, we can come out and most of the things I need to do, I can do to patients out in the garden, and my colleagues, the physiotherapists, can come out and they can join me and we can talk to the patients, and we can meet with their relatives in the garden, and that just makes things just a bit nicer, how to interact.
So Horatio's Garden at Chelsea has been designed in collaboration with its resting place, which will be at the Spinal Injury Centre in Sheffield, which is the UK's second biggest spinal injury centre. There's been a big process of collaboration and consultation with patients, with staff, with everybody involved in Sheffield, but also beneficiaries of the other Horatio's Gardens with Harris Bugg, so that it really learnt to understand the needs of our group of patients who have very particular specialist needs. This garden will go to a hospital looking after people who are acutely unwell, but also people who are rehabilitating from a huge psychological trauma.
We're very honoured to have been asked to design not only the Chelsea Garden but the 8th Horatio's Garden in Sheffield. And so we've spent many months and many visits to different Horatio's Gardens, speaking to patients and listening to the many elements that they value and the items of a Horatio's Garden which are so important.
Well, initially when I had my spinal injury, I was a wheelchair user, and then from that I developed my walking skills again. So when I was trying to practice my walking, the garden really provided like an even, safe path to try walk on again. And I think that was really wonderful because it meant I could hold my dad's hand or walk with the physiotherapist around the garden and feel safe that there wasn't any obstacles on the road. And I think it's really beneficial for a wheelchair user as well, because there's very even surfaces, so they can access the pods and without fear of having obstacles in the road or having to navigate around things.
We're really looking at all of the elements of our design through the lens of patients. Those elements include things like the garden building that we've collaborated with McMullen's studio.
I think what's amazing about designing the pod is the idea of creating an environment that's warm and sheltering and allows people to enjoy the garden all year round. For some patients, their field of vision is actually much more upwards to a ceiling, and a ceiling in a ward is obviously quite a disappointing experience, and to have a roof light where we can drop the canopy of trees above it makes for quite an interesting and more beautiful and uplifting experience.
We heard from patients that water features provide so much value, from touch to sound to bringing wildlife into the garden. The design of the water feature was really inspired by the industrial heritage of Sheffield, or the City of Steel, in particular the cutlery making process.
There's such a history of cutlery in Sheffield, and these blocks, they have these imprints, but there are so many different varieties and so many different shapes that they're actually really fascinating. So I was really keen to work with those because they express something of the history of Sheffield, but to use them almost like a texture for the water running through. It's not really shouting out cutlery. Initially you see this texture on the surface and the water playing through it, and then when you get closer you realise that each one of these blocks is a different tool with the impression of the cutlery on the surface. So it becomes more and more intriguing the more you look at it.
Horatio's Garden as a charity touches thousands of lives, and we really wanted to have an idea which incorporated all the people, from the patients to the NHS staff to volunteers and even to the people making the Chelsea Garden. And we came up with this idea of thumbprints, something which was really tactile, something that anybody could do, and they're going to be displayed inside the garden building.
Chelsea Flower Show is an incredible platform. It's the world's greatest flower show, and as a garden charity it is really the pinnacle of a place that we could be to really demonstrate to people about our work. We've got 6 gardens across the UK spinal injury centres at the moment, and we want to be able to bring gardens to all 11 spinal injury centres and to really get people to think about the importance of beautiful design for people who have mobility and accessibility needs.